Serious. What are some of the most mysterious unexplained events recorded in history? Story 1. We know from accounts in several sources that ancient Byzantine military forces attacked rival navies, and rarely armies, with a primitive type of pressurized flamethrower. Our best effort cannot, however, discern what they used for fuel or how exactly they overcame the engineering problems involved. Lots of different theories exist, but none have been proven. We only know what it came to be called Greek fire. Story 2. One of my favorite ocean mysteries is the 52 Hz whale. It's a whale whose regular call is a very different frequency pattern from that of any other baleen whale ever heard. So different that scientists aren't entirely sure what species of whale it might be, although it has a migration pattern slightly similar to those of fin and blue whales. One theory is that the whale is of a known species, but is deformed or possibly even deaf. Edit. The call sample on this whale's Wikipedia page is sped up to a much higher pitch than the call actually is. Here is the actual recording of the whale. Played at normal speed. Pro tip: put on headphones or you may not hear it very well. Answer: it's called Blue 52 and I want to meet it. Well, a lot of people do. Passing or otherwise, its calls have unfortunately never been responded to. Because whale songs are actually conversations, this is really sad. Because we can't find Blue 52, there is a debate about why its call is so strange, whether it's deformed, deaf, or just has a squeaky voice, or if it is possibly a subspecies through mutation but cannot find a mate. Another ongoing debate is to why it is not replied to, and there are two equally sad theories. 1. Due to the high-pitched nature of its voice, other whales do not to me want to talk to it because it is weird, effectively an outcast. 2. There is also a theory that whether they want to or not, other whales cannot respond because Blue 52's call is outside of their hearing range. Either way, it's a very sad thought about a possibly disabled whale bumbling about in the deep blue all alone, constantly calling to try and make a friend, but never getting a response. Story 3. The Voynich manuscript. Sure, maybe the language it's in is extinct, which is why no one knows of it, but pictures of plants that have never before been seen? Answer: I really like the theory that it's written by an Aztec convert to Christianity shortly after Cortez's conquest, in a lost Nahuatl script. The theory is by a couple of botanists who recognized a few of the plants as North American species. It would also explain why the imagery is a weird mix of traditional Christian and European symbols and unknown imagery. We've just lost so much from that culture. Story 4. Benjamin Kyle. Man found behind a Burger King with amnesia. From 2004 to 2015, he had no clue who he was or how he got there. Finally, scientists found his name thanks to genetic records. No one to this day knows how he came to be in that state. Story 5. The Mary Celeste, found with no life or bodies on board, but with all cargo from the Ledger still on board, likely ruling out piracy. None of the crew were ever found. Story 6. Disappearance of Brian Schaffer creeps me out. In April 2006, a guy is seen on CCTV entering a bar in Columbus, Ohio with friends, and is again spotted briefly outside talking to two girls. He then goes back into the bar and is never seen or heard from again. CCTV does not see him leave the bar, and there was no other way he could have left without being seen. The more I read about it, the more confusing and frustrating it gets to try and theorize what could have happened to him. Interestingly, a ping from his phone was detected 14 miles northwest 5 months later. Edit. I had actually made a mistake in the comments below. The camera at the back door was not rigged to go off when it detected movement. Instead, it was a continuously recording camera that panned and zoomed when it detected someone coming through the door. So investigators could watch hours of footage and determine this was not the case here. Answer: okay, this is scary. I literally know a guy named Brian Schaffer. He middle-aged, probably late 30s to early 40s, which lines up if you do the math. He lives in Canada, so it's not across the world or anything from where he went missing. And get this, he is a trained EMT. Coincidence? Great post BTW. Very interesting read. Update. Since my inbox is flooding with requests LOL. I don't know him well enough to know if he has a Pearl Jam tattoo on his arm, but I can't recall ever seeing him in a sleeveless shirt. The mystery remains until further updates. Story 7. Gloria Ramirez, aka the Toxic Lady. About 8:15 p.m. on the evening of February 19, 1994, Ramirez, suffering from the effects of advanced cervical cancer, was brought into the emergency room of Riverside General Hospital by paramedics. She was extremely confused and was suffering from tachycardia and Cheney-Stokes respiration. The medical staff injected her with diazepam, midazolam, and lorazepam to sedate her. When it became clear that Ramirez was responding poorly to treatment, the staff tried to defibrillate her heart. At that point, several people saw an oily sheen covering Ramirez's body, and some noticed a fruity, garlic-like odor that they thought was coming from her mouth. A registered nurse named Susan Kane attempted to draw blood from Ramirez's arm and noticed an ammonia-like smell coming from the tube. She passed the syringe to Julie Gorkinski, a medical resident, who noticed manila-colored particles floating in the blood. At this point, Kane fainted and was removed from the room. Shortly thereafter, Gorkinski began to feel nauseated. Complaining that she was lightheaded, she left the trauma room and sat at a nurse's desk. A staff member asked her if she was okay, but before she could respond, she also fainted. Maureen Welch, a respiratory therapist who was assisting in the trauma room, was the third to pass out. The staff was then ordered to evacuate all emergency room patients to the parking lot outside the hospital. Overall, 23 people became ill and 5 were hospitalized. A skeleton crew stayed behind to stabilize Ramirez. At 8:50 p.m., after 45 minutes of CPR and defibrillation, Ramirez was pronounced dead from kidney failure related to her cancer. Answer: Gorkinski denied that she had been affected by mass hysteria and pointed to her own medical history as evidence. After the exposure, she spent 2 weeks in the intensive care unit with breathing problems. She developed hepatitis and a vascular necrosis in her knees. Riverside Coroner's Office contacted Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to investigate the incident. Livermore Labs postulated that Ramirez had been using dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, a solvent used as a powerful degreaser, as a home remedy for pain. Users of this substance report that it has a garlic-like taste. Sold in gel form at hardware stores, it could also explain the greasy appearance of Ramirez's body. The Livermore scientists theorized that the DMSO in Ramirez's system might have built up owing to urinary blockage caused by her kidney failure. Oxygen administered by the paramedics would have combined with the DMSO to form dimethylsulfone, DMSO2. DMSO2 is known to crystallize at room temperature, and crystals were observed in some of Ramirez's drawn blood. Electric shocks administered during emergency defibrillation could have then converted the DMSO2 into dimethyl sulfate. DMSO4, a powerful poisonous gas, exposure to which could have caused the reported symptoms of the emergency room staff. The Livermore scientists postulated on The New Detectives that the change in temperature of the blood drawn from the 98.6 F of Ramirez's body to the 64 degrees Fahrenheit of the emergency room may have contributed to its conversion from DMSO2 into DMSO4. Story 8. Because I'm in an ancient Rome binge phase right now, the disappearance of the 9th Legion. Over 5,000 Roman soldiers stationed in Great Britain were never mentioned again in historical records after 120 AD. They simply disappeared from history. Considering that we have a respectable amount of primary sources for the losses of other legions throughout Rome's lengthy military history, this is a bit odd. Theories range from destruction in wars against local tribes to aliens, of course. Doctor Who even did an episode on them. Story 9. The Dancing Plague of 1518. I don't understand how people died of dancing and couldn't stop. I will always believe it was fake, but it was widely documented. Answer. Back in the 50s, a friend of my grandfather died of exhaustion. He went on a hike, came back and couldn't sleep, always felt the need to be moving and was always fidgeting, pacing, exercising, or walking. He was getting about 5 to 10 hours of sleep a week with the help of substances. After about a month, his body just gave out on him, and he was hospitalized. A week later, his heart just stopped. Story 10. The Nazca Lines. People drew huge pictures in the sand that no one could see until hundreds of years later when airplanes were invented. Answer. Hey, I actually know the answer to this. Some experts believe the first lines were used to trace groundwater movements, and so the Nazca people drew lines to reliably find water. After that, they took on a more artistic form, which is the lines you're referring to, and they had religious meaning. Contrary to your statement, the other way to see the shapes the lines make is to climb on the nearby mountains. The Nazca people worshiped mountains, and there were many religious pilgrimage sites on nearby mountains, so people were regularly climbing them. Experts do still marvel at the straightness and precision of the drawing and wonder what tools were used, but we know why they were made and people could easily see them. Story 11. I forgot a lot of the info about this one, but the music on the dark side of the moon, probably faked. Pretty simple story. During 1969, during the Apollo 10 mission, for 1 hour, they had to orbit behind the moon. During this period, NASA lost touch with them and they were on their own. At one point, they start to receive a whistling signal. When it starts, they begin talking about how it sounds like outer space music. The only concern is that they have no reaction to it. They just take it as something expected. Answer. I wouldn't be surprised if their instruments picked up weird sounds. Radio waves are just a form of electromagnetic radiation. However, so is light. The light waves are just at a frequency range that our eyes don't filter out. However, space is full of starts of different energies, nebulas, black holes, and all sorts of understood phenomenon which are constantly emitting electromagnetic radiation. Now, their instrumentation is most likely tuned to pick up radio waves of a certain frequency. However, when the shuttle passed behind the moon, the radio waves coming from the Earth would have been blocked, so their instruments would be picking up the much smaller background frequency coming from various stellar objects. What they were hearing was probably just caused by that random noise. Story 12. Approx 5,000-year-old underground temple with perfect acoustics. Word spoken in the oracle room is magnified 100-fold and is audible throughout the entire structure. Story 13. The Shag Harbor UFO. Back in the 60s, there was a huge flying object seen over the harbor in Nova Scotia where it hovered for a while and it crashed into the water. So in the morning, all the fishermen went out to look for debris. Some people claimed to see lights under the water, so some people dived the next morning, and they found nothing. Lights were later spotted underwater around the HMC Shelburne, followed by another underwater ship. Here's the article if anyone is interested. Way more details than I can mention. Story 14. The 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. The events depict a giant space battle with carriers and dogfights. Story 15. Not sure if most mysterious, but pretty interesting regardless. There is this one star, KIC 8462852. Seriously, who names these? That is acting pretty odd. We don't know what causes it. I recommend checking this TED Talk about it if you're interested. Story 16. The sea people that came wrecked Egypt's chute, then were never heard from again. We don't know where they come from or where they went. Story 17. The word fudge is a linguistic mystery. It is a very common word in English, but we straight up don't know how we got it. A lot of words have some sort of trail. True, there are many words that have murky origins, but here's why fudge is so odd. It's all over from the PIE family tree, not just English. We don't know how those languages got the word either. The earliest use was in a macaronic text from the 1500s. There's some belief that it comes via Germanic and others that it comes from Latin. Germanic is more likely, but the key is we really don't know for certain. Story 18. Harold Holt, Australian Prime Minister when swimming in 1967, disappeared and his body never recovered. No one is exactly sure what happened to him, but he was presumed dead. Answer. The surf that day was said to be pretty fierce, and Holt was possibly suffering from a heart condition that had made him pass out earlier that year. He also had almost drowned at least once while skin diving in 1967. It's pretty likely that his health problems acted up when he was too far out, and he got pulled under and away. The mystery is that nobody knows what issue specifically caused it, but it's more or less known that he was suffering from a shoulder issue and a possible heart issue, both of which would have prevented him from surviving the surf. Story 19. UFOs. The Tehran UFO incident. The Belgian UFO wave. The Gorman dogfight. The Kaikoura lights. The Mantell UFO incident. The Phoenix lights. The Berwyn Mountain UFO incident. The Clapham Wood mystery. The Laken Heath Bentwaters incident. The Robert Taylor incident. The Rendlesham Forest incident. The 1492 light sighting. The Height 611 UFO incident. The Ghost Rockets. The Shag Harbor UFO incident. 1561 sighting over Nuremberg. The Battle of Los Angeles. The Petrozavodsk phenomenon. The Shag Harbor UFO incident. The Trinidad Islands UFO. The Trans-en-Provence case. The Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter. The Virginia UFO incident, possibly the most famous. Roswell, mysterious illness. The Hollandwell incident. The Dancing Plague of 1518. Gloria Ramirez. The Oakville Blobs. People, disappearances, deaths. The Man from Tord. Rudolph Fentz. D. B. Cooper. The Tamam Shud case. The Isdal woman. The Zodiac killer. The Lead Masks case. Frederick Valentich. Dyatlov Pass. The 1962 Alcatraz escape. The Island Moore Lighthouse Keepers. The Man in Jindadion. The Steel Cylinder. Jack the Ripper. Unexplained Things Phenomena. UVB 76. The Brown Mountain Lights. The Hum. The Mary Celeste. The Tunguska Event. Mothman. Skyquakes. The Voynich Manuscript. The Montauk Monster. The 52 Hertz Whale. La Mancha Negra. The Toynbee Tiles. The Kentucky Meat Shower. Star Jelly. Sailing Stones. Blood Rain. The Solway Firth Spaceman. Here's a few to keep people busy for a while. It sure took me a while to compile them all. Answer. Clapham Wood is near where I live, still freaks locals out. It's a bit north of the fairly large town of Worthing and east of the small village of Clapham. It's not actually a particularly large wood, but has more than its fair share of weird shoot. There were a load of UFO sightings reported in the 60s, which brought a fair few paranormal hunting tourists to the area. Then there are the 4 unsolved disappearances and takedown throughout the 70s and 80s, where the bodies turned up sometime after the event. Victims include the local reverend and police constable. There are also multiple accounts of animals freaking out and bolting away from the woods, mostly horses and dogs, some of which had to be put down for displaying rabies-like symptoms. We don't have rabies in the UK. Weird satanic shoot often turns up in the woods to this day. Animal bones, bloodstains, crosses, candles, odd knives, etc. Plus, people have found hidden shacks and tents in the undergrowth with more satanic stuff attached. There are rumors of graves being disturbed at the local churchyard as well, which may explain why a reverend was one of the victims. A big storm in 1987 felled a lot of the trees in the woods, which put a stop to the takedown, but the woods are recovering to their original size again now. There is an ancient quarry in the woods, which apparently results in higher than normal levels of background radiation. Not harmful, though. It's been theorized animals might detect this. The geography also seems to result in a lot of localized fog, which tends to hover just above head height and add to the ambience. To get into even weirder religious things, Druids, pagan Satanists believe in ley lines, which cross the country between important sites. Apparently, the woods forms some sort of triangle with 2 ancient hill forts nearby, which gives it some significance. Druids and pagans can occasionally be seen performing candlelit rituals on important dates at those hill forts, although they seem harmless enough. So yeah, I don't believe in all this weird paranormal shoot, but what I do know is that 4 unsolved takedown happened in those woods and weird people hang out there, so I'm certainly not going there after dark. This is all happening in an otherwise fairly quiet part of southern England as well. Story 20. Antikythera mechanism. A device from 150–100 BC made with technology that was lost. This technology never appeared again until the 14th century. Story 21. I'm going to drop some of the best from previous times this question has been put forward. The 12,000-year-old city of Göbekli Tepe. Who built it? Why? Where did they go? Coral Castle. Very interesting place built by hand by one man who took the secret of how to his grave and only left hints in an insane and rambling book that no one has decoded yet. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. Who the hell was Caspar Hauser? The Green Children of Woolpit. The Nazi bell. Where the Etruscan language came from, it isn't so much a Indo-European language as it is a language more closely related to the Turks or the Finnish, which is strange as to how those people got there and built an extremely advanced civilization that would eventually be annexed by the Romans through a mix of war and cultural marriages. The riddle about the Yonaguni Island, is it man-made, and if so, who built it? Answer: Caspar Hauser was just some lunatic con man who tried to extort money and residence out of people from a better socioeconomic class than him. He went so far as to stab himself to keep the con going, but miscalculated the depth of the wound and ended up dying from it. The only mystery is why people were so idiotic as to not call him on his bullshit for so long. Story 22. Here are some I am fascinated by. The Salish sea missing feet. 16 feet have washed up on beaches along the coast of Washington, Untied States, and British Columbia, Canada. It's likely most of the feet belong to tragic end jumpers who've leaped off bridges into the water. Some feet still remain unidentified, as in nobody knows who they belong to. Tara Calico. While there are plenty of missing persons cases from around the world, this one is pretty chilling for a disturbing photograph. Tara vanished in New Mexico in September 1988. In June 1989, a woman discovered a Polaroid in a Florida parking lot which showed a girl bearing similar resemblance to Tara, as well as an unknown young boy who appeared to be bound and with type over their mouths and could be in the back of a van, in the trunk of a car, or in a room somewhere. Supposedly, a windowless cargo van was seen near where the photo was found and was gone when the woman exited the store and found the picture. Not necessarily a mysterious, unexplained event, but surely creepy. Tunguska event. In June 1908, a huge explosion decimated 80 million trees in a 2,000 kilometer square area and caused no human casualties. It's theorized to be a meteor that disintegrated before it hit the ground because there was no impact crater found. I find that very interesting that such a cataclysmic occurrence happened, but we don't fully know exactly what it was. Answer. As for the feet, the only real unexplained portion pertains to the foot's identities. There is general consensus. I do see you mention tragic end. Just want to say to other people, this likely isn't a serial killer with a foot alternative tastes. That the reason feet wash up so much is due to how a clothed body at sea decomposes. Effectively, as the body decomposes, the joints will naturally separate, severing the foot from the body. The feet that washed up were usually in sports shoes with rather buoyant soles. Thus, the shoes floated with the fleshy bits facing downwards and out of access to scavenger birds. Cool and creepy stuff. Story 23. For me, just out of sheer curiosity, I'd like to know what the hell was going on in April of 1561, where the good people of Nuremberg basically witnessed today what might be called a drone battle, air battle. It sure beats the hell out of the more recent decades in that there's almost nothing like it except a couple of, maybe, copycat incidents that may or may not have occurred. Something like this occurs again in 1566 in Basel, Switzerland. In this way, unlike modern times, these folks would have almost no reference point for a sky battle or celestial event. Story 24. Not exactly an event, but the Voynich manuscript. It is a book written in an unknown language with odd illustrations, and it is at least 400 years old. It is European, but no one knows who wrote or why. Story 25. 62 children from Zimbabwe witnessing a UFO landing, all with accurate and matching accounts of the incident in the 90s. Interviews were recorded here. Story 26. Byron Price's 1982 book, The Secret, A Treasure Hunt, had 12 riddles and 12 paintings, which when paired and solved were said to lead to 12 hidden treasures around North America. As far as I know, only 2 have been fully solved and found, and I really want to know how to find the rest. Story 27. The WOW signal, perhaps the only possible extraterrestrial radio source we've ever received. It came from a barren area in the Sagittarius constellation and might have been a passing spaceship or something, as it was never detected again. It got its name from the scientist writing "wow" next to the readout. Personally, I would have written, "What in the actual fudge?" Story 28. I'm super late to the thread, but one of my favorites that I didn't see anyone else mention is the young sun paradox. Basically, we know how stars like our sun evolve and grow. We also know from geological record when Earth did and didn't have liquid water. The thing is that those two things don't line up right. Earth has liquid water at a time when the sun should have been too dim for Earth to have liquid water. Either our sun is more abnormal than we think it is, or our understanding of how stars work is wrong. but we'll don't know which. Story 29. This isn't well documented anywhere and has been reported to be a hoax, but it still fascinates me. In the early 50s, a guy showed up at Tokyo airport with a passport from a country that didn't exist called Toured. He had numerous world currencies with him and pointed to Andorra when asked to identify Toured on a map. Tokyo authorities put him in a hotel overnight until they could figure out what was going on, and he disappeared from a guarded room with no trace. Some people call the guy a time traveler, I think. If he existed, he was some kind of organized criminal. Story 30. This is one local to me, but I believe it may have happened in other places, the Baraboo booms. This article is from 2012, so at the time, plenty of 2012 end-of-the-world jokes were made, but in reality, it could be a tiny earthquake, or it could be aliens, not sure we ever got.